A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. For those of you who've already logged in, I'd just like to let you know that the session is being recorded and the content will be shared soon after the session is completed. Kindness in the time of COVID. When we thought of the episode title, we were all filled with gratitude of some kind or the other. It's been a difficult year for all, and each one of us have gone the extra mile to support. Institutions all over the world are emphasizing on the 4 C's: critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. Yes, indeed, these are very important skills. But the 21st century presents new challenges, which can be won by battling strategies. But what this year has taught us is the future holds good only if we encourage our children to cultivate the wisdom of love and compassion. On that note, it is my privilege to introduce to you our panel today. Dr. Susan Woodhouse. She is the Associate Professor at Lehigh University in the Department of Education and Human Services, the Training Director of Counseling and Psychology Program, and the Director of Caregiving Attachment and Regulations of Emotion. Robert Graham. He is currently the Faculty Officer at the Faculty of Engineering, University of Strathclyde. He's worked in the international student recruitment and partnership development sector for over 12 years and has been involved in all parts of the student journey, from initial counseling sessions, engaging during student programs, and communication after graduation. Akshay Jain, Senior Associate Director, Student Life at Korea University. He received a scholarship to pursue his pre-university as well as undergrad education in Singapore. While he majored in economics at the National University of Singapore, he also explored many other disciplines and traveled to more than 10 countries. And last, not the least, this session will be moderated by Ms. Meenu Arora, Assistant Director Outreach at Korea University, with a passion to counsel students and make informed career decisions on how to prepare for Industry 4.0. She's a counseling psychologist and a life skill trainer with experience of more than 20 years in dealing with students, parents, and teachers. She has received the Life Empowerment Award in 2018 from the Center of Education and Development, and also received other awards from ASEP. Without further ado, I will pass it on to Ms. Meenu Arora.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, that is the first question. That's what we were discussing. Thank you so much, Ritika, for such your kind words. And thank you, everyone, all the panelists, for agreeing to be a part of this panel discussion, which is the need of the hour. And thank you, all the participants, to be here in the evening. I hope all of you are having a cup of tea. And this is more of, we are going to converse with each other, and we are going to share with each other that how to do counseling with kindness during this COVID-19. And as soon as when Ritika shared this topic with me, I was just wondering, what kind of kindness one can show during COVID-19? And the first thought which came to my mind, am I kind to my own self? And I think we need to see that, yes, of course, we need to show empathy and kindness to the others, not only to those who are suffering from COVID-19, but otherwise, especially the youth. And people, I hear all the conversations going around where people say that youth is the least affected, part of the population because of the COVID, but maybe the health impacts are not that severe. But, our present youth is going through a lot of long lasting, effects in terms of the disruption in the education, in terms of lack of employability, in terms of looking at the uncertainty which they are facing, for future in terms of their education and the careers. So I was very fascinated, Susan, when I was reading your, profile, and when Ritika introduced you, that you have developed a course on social emotional learning, which is such an important part of, I think, today's youth education. Because we all teach our kids, to face the success, but nobody teaches them how to face these kind of challenges. We have prepared them for the world of work, but what about this kind of situation where COVID-19 is not only the health impact, but it has come with such a baggage of the social, emotional health problems. They are increasing. And in fact, people are predicting, certain surveys are saying that the next pandemic is going to be the mental illness. So I would like to know your views on that, as you have developed a course also on that. Please tell us.
Thank you so much. It's such a great question, and one of the things that oftentimes people don't think about is that the social emotional impacts, they also impact all the social emotional impacts of COVID and all the other challenges that students can be facing, can result in lowering of academic achievement, which can be a real problem. So I thought today I would talk a little bit about what is social emotional learning and talk a little bit about the program that we developed. I'm going to share my screen so that I can. I'll need to be given permission to share my screen.
Sure. Sorry, we should have thought of it. Allow me a second.
In the meanwhile, I would like to request the participants to please continue typing your questions in the Q&A box. Because as I said, it is more of a conversation. We will keep picking up the questions from the Q&A box. So please feel free to type any kinds of questions.
Yeah. While I'm waiting to be able to share my screen, one of the things that we have been doing at Lehigh University is because of the time of COVID, we've been doing much more. Okay, so here we go. All right. Okay, let me see if that will. There we go. Okay. One of the things we've been doing is teaching online, which has been a really exciting opportunity because we developed a new certificate program in social emotional learning. It's a 4-course sequence. And so because of COVID, it ended up providing this unique opportunity to be teaching about these topics internationally. And so we've had in the same classroom students from all around the world, including our students in the United States. But it's been a very exciting time to try to talk about social emotional learning, because so many of the school counselors and teachers and principals who've been taking the course have been really trying to figure out how do we bring social emotional learning to our schools, in particular a time when students are feeling under incredible stress. And not only students, but also teachers. And when teachers and administrators and other staff people are feeling under stress, it's really difficult to bring on new things. And so one of the things I'll be talking about is that it's social emotional learning is a whole school endeavor. It's not just the students in the school, but also the teachers and the staff, the school counselors, even administrators. We need to be thinking big picture about supporting positive mental health and positive social emotional learning. So what is social emotional learning? Social emotional learning is about helping students in an intentional way to develop core competencies of social emotional learning. And so that would include self-awareness and self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And all of that takes place in a context of classrooms, schools, families and caregivers, and whole communities. And so when we want to promote social emotional learning, we need to be thinking big picture and about all the relationships and interconnections between people at all of these different levels. And this model comes from the organization CASTLE, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And there's so much information and so many resources available for school counselors or other people who are interested in bringing social emotional learning to their schools. Many wonderful resources there. So I want to commend that to you. So in terms of promoting SEL within the schools, there are a few steps that would need to be taken. First of all, planning the SEL programming within the school. And one thing that's important to know is that there are many empirically supported interventions and curricula that are available for all grades, from preschool all the way up through high school. And also many promising programs that are also available. And there's a great deal of information available about all this programming at the CASEL website. And one of the things we do in our program is to teach people how to make sense of all the information that's available there and make sense of all the research that's available in order to help people select programming that's going to be useful for their particular context. It's really important to strengthen SEL in adults, and that's a really key piece, is strengthening adult SEL, getting adults comfortable in talking about feelings and comfortable in self-care, providing resources within the school for self-care, and thinking about how to support the adults. Then, of course, there's implementation. And then we also talk a lot in our program about how to collect data within the schools and use those data to modify the SEL programming that we're doing, so that we can be learning from our own experiences and making the experience better. And the big question is, well, does social emotional learning work? Do these programs work? And the answer is yes, they do. You'll often get questions about why include social emotional learning in a school setting. This is just touchy-feely, or just feel-good stuff, or the soft stuff. School is supposed to be for learning. I'm here to teach. These are the kinds of comments that we often hear. But the bottom line is that the competencies that can be taught and learned through social emotional learning programming are those very competencies that are very important for the work world. And these are the kinds of competencies that employers really want their new employees to have. So it's really beneficial to take this on. And there is a big meta-analysis by Durlach et al. 2011 that definitively showed that SEL programming works, and not only to improve social emotional outcomes, but also to improve student achievement. So a meta-analysis takes the data from all the existing studies, through every kind of study that you could find, and looks at, so what are the effects overall when we look across all the studies. It was the first meta-analysis on school-based programs to promote social emotional learning, and it focused on multiple outcomes, so social emotional skills and attitudes towards self and other, positive social behavior, conduct problems, emotional distress, and importantly also academic performance. And they looked at universal social emotional learning programs that were offered to the whole student body, and what they found was that it did work. And what was really important was for SEL, what made SEL programming work best is if it was done in a sequenced step-by-step training approach, and allowed for active forms of learning where students could focus sufficient time on skill development, and that there were clear, explicit learning goals. So in other words, the acronym SAFE it kind of encapsulates what we want in a social emotional learning program. And all of these things needed to be done together in the program. And the social emotional skills, if students improved a great deal in terms of recognizing emotions and managing stress, empathy for others, problem solving and decision making, their attitudes improved, they developed more positive social behaviors, conduct problems improved, and emotional distress improved. So, and importantly, academic performance improved as much as would be the case with a purely academics focused intervention. There was an 11 percentile gain, and these effects were still significant 6 months later. And Also importantly, classroom teachers and staff were able to effectively conduct the SEL program. So it didn't require outside staff to come in and do this. It could be done with the existing teachers and school counselors that were already available. And it was effective at all levels, from the youngest all the way up to high school. And the programs were effective regardless of location, so urban, suburban, or rural settings. So I think this is really important. And just getting to the basics of what's most important for SEL, bringing social and emotional learning into the classroom. And what's most important is the relationship. For us to, we can get a nice shiny new program that we want to introduce in the schools, but in order to learn how to drive that car, adult SEL is the key. The relationship matters. It's a relationship improves student engagement and then improves achievement. And so we can learn about specific programs that are available. We can learn about them through the CASEL website and through other resources, but we need to learn how to drive the car and how to navigate our classrooms by building our own adult SEL, our own social emotional learning, building positive relationships with students and with families, and also creating organizational strategies that promote a sense of order and safety and connection within the classroom. And it really boils down to relationships. So security comes from experiencing adults as a secure base from which young people can explore and to whom they can turn as needed. The message we want to communicate to our students is, I'm here for you when you need me and you are worth it. And some of the ways that we can communicate that message is through being attuned on an emotional level to what's happening for our students, a warm, caring tone of voice, validating and listening to emotional experiences, asking questions, and leaving time within the classroom to talk about feelings. In the class, the social emotional learning class that I teach, we talk about the research, but we spend a part of every class talking about feelings that the adults that were taking the class are feeling. How are we doing? And we do exercises each time that we meet to promote our own, we spend time meditating together. We spend time talking about feelings. We learn listening skills. A lot of the students say, oh, I love coming to this class because I've been rushing all day, and now we can just relax and talk to each other. And they get to see firsthand how the social emotional learning component makes the learning happen a lot easier. So making empathic statements like, you sound so very disappointed and sad, just really listening. And when we experience these things, the student within our classroom learns how to make sense of their internal world, how to make sense of the social world. They can understand that, I make sense of the world by saying, I understand that I feel whatever I'm feeling when something happens. And if they learn what it feels like to be regulated through the help from the adults. So first with help, and then by having that experience with us as adults, they then can go on to be able to do that on their own. And of course, we need to have places as adults where we can get that experience ourselves, whether it's in the classroom with me or on site, having that experience at their schools. And what can get in the way is those little irritations or unpleasant behaviors that trigger us to retract warmth, encouragement, and connection strategies. And so one of the things that we work on in our classroom is becoming aware of feelings that can arise within ourselves that make us pull away from our students and make us less available to one another as adults working at the work site. And so when we have a place to process our own stress, our own hurts, and our own history, then we can be more available to one another. And so that's part of what we work on, is building awareness about all those things. And so all that self-reflection and taking care of one another, taking care of ourselves, helps us work together towards a better future for our children and youth. And that is my presentation, and I'm sure we'll have questions and opportunity for discussion.
Thank you, Susan. That was fantastic. And I think you beautifully explained that how this expression of emotion is necessary not only for youth or children, but for adults as well. Sometimes we just assume things, as adults also, that he is an adult, so he should understand, then they get less room for the expression of emotions. And I always believe in, and I think the last topic of the session was beautiful, where you talked about the mental health of counselors also. So I always give example to students, that when you take a plane, the first instruction is, in case of emergency, you first put the oxygen mask on yourself, and then you try to help others. And that's exactly, even adults need to be emotionally healthy, in order to help the children and the youth. So I really liked when you talked about the relationship engagement, and how after introducing social emotional learning, it automatically increases the academic achievement also. And yes, a few years back, I did a similar program with school students, and I got a similar results, that you are working on the social emotional health of the students, but invariably, it will increase the academic achievement automatically. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. And I'm sure people have a lot of questions. I can already see in Q&A box, but we will be taking up the questions at the end. Participants, please keep on typing your questions in the Q&A box. And now I would like to move on to Akshay, although we had discussed about a different kind of sequence, but I can see after Susan's presentation, because I know Akshay is doing a lot at the campus of Kriya University, running the whole mental health program, including meditation and all. So Akshay, would you like to throw some light on what kind of programs you do for students to maintain their mental well-being? And how are you managing in this digital world nowadays, when people are not there on campus?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Susan, for that wonderful presentation. Yes, thank you for the introduction, Meenu. And I'll be speaking briefly about what we have been trying to do at Kriya University over the last 6 months. So as was mentioned earlier, I am a senior associate director at the Office of Student Life, and we've been trying to build this office over the last 2 years. We are still a very young university. We have 2 cohorts right now of undergraduate students. So the exciting part about building the Student Life office is that students work along with us, and really it's student-led, and they have to guide us in terms of what kind of student life they envision on campus. Because in any institution's life, the first few years are really important in setting the foundation, and we want students to work with us. And hopefully, once Kriya grows older, some of these institutions that we are building in terms of various programs, initiatives will serve students in the longer run. So there are a few things that we've been doing over the last 6 months or so. One I would like to cover is what kind of mental health support we have extended to students. So that's really a measure in terms of responding to students' needs. And I'll come to some of the preemptive measures as well, because I feel that when any university is talking about mental health, we not only need to diagnose and help students if they are coming up or reaching out for support, but also proactively foster a culture and community where more and more students feel included, more and more students feel that they are at home, they're at a community where they don't have to come to a stage where they need to reach out for professional support. So both preemptive and responsive strategies. So in terms of responses, what we've done is we've partnered with a few organizations, and one of them is called Your Dost. They provide 24/7 online counseling support When I say counseling, I mean mental health counseling and therapy. So they have mental health professionals, more than I think 1,000 professionals on their platform. They're available for booking appointments 24/7. And in fact, some counselor is always online. So if you're in distress, and what we've noticed is usually late at night and during midweek, so Tuesdays, Wednesdays, late night, when there's submission time and students are feeling stressed out, that's when they reach out at about 1:30. They'll ping someone on the platform and say, hey, I'm feeling stressed or whatever. So it's completely anonymized, and students have been using this. And we also get engagement reports from your those, and we realize that every month hundreds and hundreds of students are taking these sessions. So that's one thing that we've done during the pandemic to be able to shift the support online. Earlier, we of course had visiting counselors to campus, but now in an online mode, we had to turn this to an online counseling. The other very important thing that we've done, and I'm really proud of that, is introducing a peer support program. Because oftentimes, mental health support is still very stigmatized, and students often shy away from reaching out to a professional. They feel that, they can cope with the situation. They just need to talk it out with a friend and so on. So while we actively conduct workshops and destigmatize and say that, hey, it's completely all right. I mean, all of us struggle with our emotions. And even if you don't have you don't have to have a diagnosis. You don't have to have a label before you reach out to anyone. And it's completely all right, even if you just want to have a conversation with someone, to reach out. But what we also realized is that, having a formalized peer support structure can act as a bridge between a student and a mental health professional. So what we've tried to do is build a peer support program. And one of our partners, mental health partners for that, was SCARF, and that's the Schizophrenia Research Foundation in Chennai. They have been very professional, and they have trained about 15 of our students. So we had a very intensive summer program with the students, and they trained about 15 of them over 8 weeks in skills, I think pretty much like what Dr. Susan Woodhouse was talking about in social emotional learning, and aspects like active listening, in aspects like how do you provide psychological first aid, how do you understand your own emotions, and then how do you understand someone else's emotions, how do you counsel them in times of stress, anxiety, a panic attack, because oftentimes peers can be the first port of call for a student to reach out. And so that was another thing that we've just launched. And this academic year, we deployed these 15 peer support volunteers, and they've been receiving calls from their friends, and they have a system to do this through our learning management system, and students are able to reach out. So that's been fantastic as well. That's another thing that we've added to the mix. And the third thing that we've tried to do is, of course, having faculty involvement. I think that's very important. We have faculty mentors for all the students. Right now, we only have about 250 undergrad students. So as I said, it's a very small, close-knit community, and we have about 35, 40 faculty mentors. So every student is able to get, every faculty only has about 5 or 6 mentees. So everyone is able to get personalized attention, and students are able to reach out to their mentors. So there's almost invariably a kind of triangulation between the Office of Student Life, the academic divisions, which is the faculty, and then the students. Because sometimes something might be happening in the classroom, we might not know about that, or sometimes we might know something about the student and what they're facing at home, and then the academic portion of the university might not know that. So it's always important to triangulate and try to understand the student situation holistically from all different aspects. So we often have these conversations with their faculty mentors to make sure that a student is receiving the kind of support that they should. And lastly, and this is something also I'm very deeply passionate about myself, is I feel that students need some sort of contemplative practices, some sort of introduction to, forming their sense of meaning and sense of purpose in their life. So we've also been introducing talks and workshops where people can come and speak to students, and also organize formal training sessions in things like mindfulness, in things like yoga, so that students, even though they're at home, they're able to pick up something very practical and useful to use in their daily life, and be able to cope with emotional stress and so on. So those are the few things that we have been doing. And from the academic side, another interesting aspect I just wanted to cover briefly before I wrap this up, and I'd be looking forward to a lot of questions, and we'll take the conversation forward. But one thing that we've been trying to do again is, interweave both the academic aspect and the student life aspect. Oftentimes, again, and that's the excitement of building a new institution, because we're building it from scratch, we can set some of these things in motion from the beginning itself. So we want more collaboration between the academic side and the student life section. And that's in the way we design the curriculum, that's in the way we design pedagogy. And of course, the academic side will provide them with declarative knowledge, or will provide them with skills and concepts and frameworks to apply. And hopefully the student life, because we are a residential program, will allow them to deploy some of these frameworks and skills that they pick up in real world setting itself. So even if you're a sports person or a performing artist, how does a class that you've taken in ethics apply to what you're doing? How does that help you become a better script writer? How does that help you become a better leader for a sports team? So our first year curriculum, which has a very interesting courses like creative thinking or ethics or design thinking, some of these skills we really want students to start applying in their outside the classroom activities as well. So that's really the holistic approach that we have. We want to allow the student to express themselves and to be able to reach out for support and create a community where they all feel safe and included, and they're able to contribute to build this institution along with us. So that's in short what I wanted to say about what we've been up to at CREA, and then I'll pass it on to our other panelists now. Thank you.
Thank you, Akshay. That's wonderful to hear your holistic program to take care of the mental well-being of the students. And in fact, as we started with during this COVID-19, it's important to maintain the physical well-being as well as the mental well-being. So now moving to Robert. Robert, what role your university has played in maintaining both, the physical and the mental well-being? How is your university prepared to support students?
Yeah, thanks very much. So today I can speak a little bit about the practical elements we've put in for support, and also the emotional elements as well, just by giving some examples. So if you want, I can share my screen and just go through just a handful of slides that I've got. But thanks very much for this opportunity. Let me just share my screen now. So can everyone see that okay? Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so thanks everyone for having me today to chat. So I thought I would just go along the lines of support in terms of the practical elements and also, of course, the emotional elements, both of which as an institution, my institution being University of Strathclyde, which of course is based in Scotland, and I am specifically from the Faculty of Engineering. Okay, so we have for years been very prominent in our student support, but obviously with the pandemic has come more and more challenges. Now, we've always had a very international focus, and with that international focus comes with it that need to offer the support in the whole student journey for students, for when they're considering us as an institution and a faculty to when they actually arrive here as well. And that is indicated by the large number of nationalities that we have, of which India is a large proportion, and we've done a lot of work in India. So in terms of the pre-arrival support, a lot of this we've already done, but we've had to ramp it up even more given the very challenging last few months we have had as an institution, and everyone across the globe has had. So we're very fortunate to have in-country support within India, where our members of staff are actually able to offer that support to the student when they're considering Strathclyde. And that's everything from help and assistance when applying for obviously your programme of choice, and then the practical elements of helping with your visa and areas like that. Something that we introduced in line with COVID was the university, we proactively started to offer a free airport taxi service. Again, this is for students when they were able to get to Glasgow in our last intake in September, October, and that means we're getting to their accommodation in a very safe environment and in a safe manner as well. Okay, and obviously as well, we like to give a lot of advice and support on what you should physically bring with you to Glasgow in Scotland. Obviously the temperature is slightly different, so we give the correct advice on that. And throughout, basically I've spent a lot of the time in my since May, basically doing webinar series with our potential students, which has involved a lot of counselling in terms of obviously what to expect on their programme, but also how the teaching will differ and the mechanisms put in place and support we've put in place. which I'll go on and speak with a little bit there as well. Now, many of our students, of course, have to self-isolate, or as commonly known as quarantine. So this covered a lot of our students, particularly from India, who were coming in September. So we made sure that all the students that were having to do this for this 2-week period, we made sure that they had access to the required food and other, essentials such as bedding, towels as well. We also made sure that when the students who were required to self-isolate, they were allocated a single occupancy room and multi-occupancy accommodation along with other students arriving on the same day, so that it was as organised as possible. And with that, the additional support we offered was that every student would be getting COVID-19 specific guidance via their arrival packs. Now, that was everything from hints and tips on how to order food in, through takeaway services, but also, of course, all the many online services that are still available within the university, particularly for health and well-being. Also, practical things like a safe and secure kitchen rota were implemented. Now, some of my colleagues touched on a similar scheme that has been implemented in their institutions, but something that we implemented specifically for COVID was this buddy scheme. So this is where students who, again, were in self-isolation, which affected a large majority of our international cohort. So staff members like myself were paired up with students to make daily contact, whether that be via email and most commonly, of course, via Zoom, which is becoming so commonly known and used as well. And it was able to identify any concerns or worries that individual students may have. So it enabled them to have a point of contact as well as their friends, so someone familiar within the university, which worked very well, and it's something that we'll continue to do for our January intake as well. Okay, and with that, of course, online wellbeing drop-in sessions were carried out for all the students who were living on our accommodation. So again, it's just about ramping up what we've already done. Now, again, this is more about the practicalities, and our campus, like every other campus, has gone through a reconfiguration process to ensure that there's a safe physical distancing, and that includes in our labs and our teaching areas. And it means that we're limiting the number of people on campus at any one time. And while we're doing this, we're following UK and Scottish Government advice at all times. Okay, but it's just to make sure that the students are as safe as possible in the physical environment. So extra cleaning and things like that as well, extra hand sanitizers at all places. So some positive news that we definitely feel has helped the well-being of our students and supported them was that back in the summer, when restrictions were eased, we were able to thankfully reopen our library, which is a big source of information for our students, but also somewhere where they can go and study in a quiet place and also get out of their own accommodation and experience something different as well. And it is very much designed for solo working, but the fact is it's open and it's another outlet for the students. Likewise, with our newly opened Strathclyde Sports Gym, we were speaking about the physical element of health and well-being as well, and having our gym reopened was a big impact on our students from September onwards. And again, we're looking to that have open for our January cohort. And to add to that, we had, when we were in a stricter lockdown, our fitness classes were actually available online as well. So I know it's not as emotional, but I thought I would just mention some of the financial support that we've offered to our students, particularly in this COVID time. And one of them is we've got our standard scholarships, but one of the things we introduced was our international travel bursary. And this was launched particularly in response to the COVID situation. So it meant that all of our international students, again, a large majority from India, who were coming, they were granted an additional bursary of £1,000. And this was aimed towards helping with their airfares, their accommodation and their visa fees and areas like that. So very much in line and in response to the COVID situation, and to offer that further financial support to our students. We also have a newly introduced COVID-19 hardship fund, of which students can apply to for additional help, because we understand the financial impact that many students are feeling as well. And this was open to all our students. So this is our key student support services. Again, mirroring what some of my colleagues were saying earlier, we have got the key support services in a wide area of situations, including, for example, our international student support team is there to help with the practicalities of visa and, you know, helping with if students are bringing other family members as well. Also, very importantly, is our disability and wellbeing service, which, again, in response to COVID, really ramped up its service and started with a self-help section of mental health and wellbeing page to enable these virtual drop-in sessions with the students. So that's really, really increased even further over this COVID challenge that we've had. And again, areas such as study skills, which have always been available, but we've had to adapt because it means that we're doing them online. And that just brings me on to that teaching, because there has been this additional shift in our support through the studies. So we've always had, like other universities, like the online where students can go online to get their studies, but we've adapted that even further. We've already got a wide experience of online learning, but it just means that we've wrapped this up even more, and it means that students have access online, of course, to the PowerPoints and the notes for the online lectures and further links to online resources. So we've put a lot of work to really improve on what we've done on an online capacity. And this just gives you an indication of how we've used Zoom. We of course use it for the small breakout rooms, for individual meetings as well. So all of our students have a go-to person within the department, within the faculty. And that, of course, is to speak about their studies, but also just to check in, because it's always good to just check in and see how you're getting on. Likewise, what I did through the buddy scheme as well with some undergraduate students from India and other countries. So it's just another voice that they can hear from, and which I think is very, very important in this time. So that's me kind of just covered very quickly what we do as an institution, as a faculty, and what we've also improved on and increased and had to increase given the challenges of COVID. But support, help, advice, assistance has always been at the forefront of what we do for our international students, and it's only going to increase more. Although we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel, we're going to continue with it, with this online and blended learning. So we're going to have to be in a position to continue this high level of support and make sure that the students are in a good state of mind. So that's all I've really got to say, and certainly, of course, welcome to take, along with my colleagues, any further questions. So thanks very much for your time. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Robert. That was fantastic, knowing about how you are supporting students, in all aspects, because as we were discussing, COVID-19 is not only the health impact, but, I think your presentation will be reassuring for those counselors who are guiding students, and for students and parents as well, that the university is fully prepared and supporting the students in all kinds of aspects, because, that is the main query which students have nowadays, that how am I going to study, and online, how will my professor support me in terms of the notes or the assessments? But I can see the university is supporting students in all aspects. That's fantastic. So I will move on to Akshay. One thing I wanted to ask, after I was listening to Robert also, and taking Susan's point forward, that how social emotional learning is so essential. So now, during this time when you are trying to support students in all those aspects, do you face any challenge in bringing the community together? And in fact, the same question I would like to ask to Susan also, that how will you impart this social emotional learning, on the digital world? And in fact, there is one question from one of the participants where she's a teacher. I'm sorry, I'm not able to read the name. So she has asked that if Susan can, suggest certain tips for the teachers to promote this social emotional learning among students. So first I will ask Akshay, what kind of challenges have you faced during this digital world? And then I will move on to Susan. Yes, Akshay.
Yes, thank you. And I think, yes, it's been fairly challenging because when we work in the Office of Student Life, we want to meet students. We want to be able to see them face to face. And since it's a residential college, it is very important for students to be able to gather after classroom hours and participate in events and sports and so on. So the first thing that I think that the students themselves were very resilient and adaptable, that they were able to transfer all of their student clubs and committee activities online. So they created a web page, and this was entirely again created by students, which served as a virtual sort of meeting place and marketplace of ideas and events where students were able to gather, and they were able to share with each other what they're up to and write poetry and share, or have open mics or organize, because they were not able to play sports physically, but organize, fantasy leagues and whatnot. So they brought out all the excitement of the campus to a virtual platform. And secondly, we also tried to organize community nights from the Office of Student Life. We recently organized one, which was very successful, and more than 200, 300 participants were present there, including faculty and staff. So it was very important, we felt, for this community to come together, and students created a short clip as a message of gratitude for the faculty. The faculty created a short clip to appreciate the resilience of students. So I think organizing events like this and proactively bringing the community together, although it's constrained and we cannot replicate. So I think that's the major takeaway for us, that we should not try to replicate what used to happen in the physical environment. I think that's setting us up for failure, because you can never really aim for the same kind of experience, but try to make the most of whatever the digital formats offer. So that's been our approach, and whatever the digital formats in terms of web spaces, in terms of webinars or community nights and online clubs and committee activities. In fact, recently the students have they formed their election commission, and they're going to hold student elections online as well. So even things related to student governance have completely moved online. They're going to do virtual campaigning. They're going to read out their manifestos online. So all of this is entirely, I think, exciting, and we've been able to do it online because we never felt that we have to wait to get back to campus to resume life as normal. So that's what we have been doing.
That's fantastic. And I can see the conversation this conversation is telling us what to implement for school students as well as for the college students. And I totally agree with you, because students do need some kind of platform to express. Surprisingly, the other day when I was taking a session, one student, I just asked them, an open-ended question, that what kind of challenges you're facing during this COVID-19. And Susan, you will be surprised to listen to this, that most of the students said that I'm feeling lonely. And I was like, during this COVID-19, when all the family members are at home, how come you're feeling lonely? And they said, this is the reason we are feeling lonely, because parents are busy with their own work. They don't want us to use phone is, or the laptop is being used only to attend classes. So when do I talk to my friends? So there is no one to talk to. So, so it becomes so difficult. So as a result of which, what happens, they start living in a denial of emotions. If you don't acknowledge your emotions, how are you going to, express it? So it's very, very important. The expression of emotions is very, very important. So Susan, what are your views on this, regarding the expression of emotions in this digital world? And as some teacher has also asked, that if you want to give some tips to the teachers where they can support students, for promoting the social emotional learning.
Absolutely. You made such a great point about how sad it is for people to be lonely when they're actually around other people. And one of the things that I found in my classroom, I did a session on listening, how to do active listening, and when the students first tried it, they found themselves doing many of the same things that we would typically do in social situations. So somebody tells a story about that's given them something that they're feeling. So what, for example, an exercise that I did was ask people to give a rose a bud and a thorn. So a rose is something that they're grateful for, something that they're happy about. A bud is something that they're looking forward to, and a thorn is something that maybe they have some negative feelings about, something that's challenging or difficult. And so it was just amazing how people, when they talked about something that they felt good about, you could just see it all on their face. It's like it was like, and students afterwards wrote in their journals, it felt so good to just even talk about something that I was feeling good about, because it's very easy to forget about those things that make us feel good in the midst of challenges. And the things that they were looking forward to, at first they were thinking, well, I'm so stressed. I have so many things that I'm worried about. What do I have to look forward to? But just remembering that there actually were taking time to think about things they felt they were looking forward to really helped them feel good. And then talking about a thorn, something that they felt challenged by or felt bad about, it helped them feel less stressed to share it with another person. And so we went around and did that. And then we did an active listening exercise where we worked on skills like how to listen, not try to solve problems, but rather just listen and ask questions, ask open questions that help people say more about the challenges that they're facing. And what students found was that it was hard for them to just listen without trying to solve problems, without trying to like make the feelings go away, without telling their own stories about things in their lives. And when they first started, everyone was talking and they weren't really doing very much listening. So I was like, we're gonna have to do a second session. We reviewed all of our skills and then we tried it again, and people were like, oh, it feels so good I feel calmer when I'm listening to somebody else. And other people felt good when I could see them starting to feel better without me trying to solve the problem. It was actually quite amazing. So taking time to listen to one another can really help reduce stress. And also some of the things that the other panelists were talking about, like doing contemplative practices, doing taking time within the class to do mindfulness, like even 5 minutes of mindfulness, just paying attention to what's happening right now without judging it or thinking about, just being present with what is. And then the most simple things like making sure that we're getting enough sleep at night, and talking about sleep and the importance of sleep, making sure that we're taking time to eat well and not just eating junky food because it's easier. All of those things, doing yoga or taking a walk, all of those things are things that help that promote stress reduction. And if we can offer those things to one another, I think that will help us all, both adults and students, do well.
Thank you so much, Susan. And in fact, the teacher who asked this question, and I can vouch for it, Susan, I myself started, first applying it on myself. And as they say that you first need to, you need to start with the individual revolution, So I started implementing as soon as the lockdown was announced. And to share with all the participants, I always used to say, because earlier I was in the school sector, so I used to say, I don't have time to do yoga and meditation, although I'm a strong believer of meditation. So I have different ways of doing meditation. So this thing I started implementing. I started doing Surya Namaskar. All of you can do that, just Google it or go onto the YouTube. There are a few steps of Surya Namaskar, and I'm telling you, it is very difficult to do it for the first time. I took 1 week to do Surya Namaskar for 10 times, but it was so energizing. I used to feel so fresh that the day when I didn't do it, I feel very, very dull. So, there are small things which you can implement and you can encourage students. And I tell you, if you tell students that I have started doing it, so you also do it, that is the best thing to tell students. Secondly, Susan, you talked about listening. Yes, many a times, even teachers, all the counselors who are here, all of us need somebody to listen to. So students also need somebody to listen to. And many times, if somebody listens to you and you feel that, oh my God, I'm done, my problem is resolved. And Susan, you were very right that many times when we listen, we start evaluating in our mind, like you are talking, but in my mind, I will start evaluating, judging. I will start thinking about my own story that is very wrong. So you beautifully emphasize the importance of listening. And yes, it is very, very important to listen to yourself only, which can come through mindfulness, as you were saying. Third important point, which is my takeaway from you and for all the teachers and students and educators and parents, sleep, the importance of sleep. What I have observed during this COVID-19, the sleep has been disturbed. All the students, and if you talk to the school students especially, they compete with each other, that you slept at 2, I slept at 3, I studied the whole night. And that disturbs your whole body clock. And people think that, oh, I feel fresh even with 2 hours sleep, and they don't realize the importance of sleep. Please read some scientific researches on that, and sleep is very, very important. Susan, thank you so much for pointing it out, and teachers should convey this to students. Robert, now coming to you. I would like to ask you, as you showed all these slides regarding your university, and it seems that you are extending that kind of support, showing full kindness to students, students who are worried about the fee structure. And I hope that after listening to your financial aid and scholarships, many of them must have been relaxed that yes, there is a chance to get a support from your university. So do you have any plans to open up in the near future where students will be attending classes face to face?
Within Strathclyde. So we are basically dictated by the rules and regulations of the Scottish government. So that's we have to take everything from them. At the moment, we have some January starts for new intake as well as the new semester for current students. The reality is we will be starting online from there, and then we will be moving into what we call blended learning, which will be a mixture of online and, where appropriate and safe to do so, we will try and implement some face-to-face. Unfortunately, it's very difficult at this time to give a definitive answer on that. Obviously, with the news of the vaccine, we're hoping that comes springtime, and then our next big intake, which will be September 2021, we are, of course, hopeful, like everyone else is, that we will be able to do more face-to-face by then. But our next semester, which starts in January, the reality is we'll be starting that online, moving into what I said about the blended learning. But at all times, this is following, as we have to follow government advice, because we, as likewise with other countries, we've been in and out of different tiers of lockdown. So it's unfortunately, I can't give a definitive answer on that, but we are hopeful that it's going to get back to some sort of normality later on in the year.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was unmuted. So one more question, which I think most of the counselors might want to ask, that suppose now if the second semester or the first semester also goes online, so what happens to their 2 years work? Will that get affected because they have done 1 semester or 1 year online?
No, that won't. As long as they graduate, so they'll graduate. So the students who graduate from like July, August 2021, which is the current cohort, if they graduate from then, those students from then on will be eligible for the post-study work or graduate route, as it's now called, which I know from experience is very, very popular for students in India. And with that, we're hopeful that as we get back to some normality through teaching, but also through industry, because there needs to be more opportunities for the students as well to find that employment. But the graduate route is definitely going ahead. We just need to iron out the process of it, but the students will be able to stay in Scotland after they finish their student visa, and they'll just then move on to the graduate route. So we are hopeful that as we get back to more normality, then there will be more opportunities in terms of industry as well. But again, unfortunately, we can't give a definitive answer on that, but we are all positive.
Okay. I think that's reassuring for students that you will be able to go back and your post-study work will not suffer. And Scotland is a beautiful place. When I went there, I never wanted to come back.
Great.
So I think, Ritika, we are close to the end. So can we take the last comments? If anybody has any question, please post it on Q&A, although whatever questions were there, I have taken it already. But Ritika, still, if I have left any question unanswered, you please let me know.
Thank you so much, Meenu, and thank you all for a very insightful session. We have received a few questions, and just from a little bit of experience, there are sometimes a few questions that participants do post into us. We will go ahead and share it with the panelists, and then come back with responses. Just on the note that Robert ended on, that when is face-to-face going to happen? I don't think anybody in this day and time can really respond to that question. I would say that even think tank would think twice before even acknowledging or saying something. And yes, the graduate immigration route is very popular with Indians. I'm saying that out of experience, being an Indian student myself. That is something that they've looked forward to. We are on the hour, so I would like to not only say thank you, but as we wrap up this year, this session has given us a moment to reflect back and see how colleagues across the globe have supported the student community. On that note, thanking our panelists, speakers, and our moderators, I wish you all a very happy Christmas in advance and happy holidays. Hope the new year brings all of us good health and peace. And the presentations which were shared, once we do have permission, we will go ahead and circulate that, because Robert, Susan, there have been a lot of comments that I have received where they have requested for your presentation. I'm presuming school counselors find it very valuable to look at the information and then articulate to the students, because at the end of the day, there are many questions which come out just out of the presentations. They may not be directly to the panel, but they will be seen. So without further ado, giving everybody time to wind up in India, because it's 7:30. And Susan, I know it's the start of your day. And Robert, you still have a little more time, a day and a half for the weekend to start. Thank you very much, and goodbye all.
Thank you so much. And before I say goodbye, I would like to just mention that in the morning, I was just going through an article by Dr. Russ Harris, in his book, The Happiness Trap. He has given very nice, explanation of face COVID. I would just like to read about that, if you give me a minute. Where he says FACE, so F stands for focus on what's in your control. Ritika, as you correctly said, nobody can judge and nobody can say when the universities are going to open up. So let's focus on what's in our control. A stands for acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. C, come back into your body and take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. E, engage in what you're doing. Don't do anything in a mechanical way. Please engage fully when you are doing something. So this is phase. The explanation for COVID. C stands for committed action. So whatever you're doing, so even if you can just show one kind action towards maybe your maid or somebody, some sweeper on the road, please show that kind of kindness. Don't be biased towards people who have already gone through COVID and who are perfectly all right. Please don't discriminate against them. O is opening up. Don't worry, stress, feelings, it's all part of life. Acknowledge them, open up, express, as Susan Akshay and Robert, all the panelists, they talked about it. So let's do it. V stands for values. So what is more important to you? Try to maintain those values even during this COVID time. No excuses in life. I identify resources. So don't be hesitant in asking for help. So whatever resources are available around you, may it be in the form of your professors, mentors, your parents, your sisters, brothers, reach out to them and talk to them. And D is disinfect and distance. So do maintain a physical distance, but not social distance. I don't know why do we use social distancing. You are not supposed to maintain a social distance. Keep talking to your friends, keep reaching out to people, and maintain physical distance. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.